Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they can't govern themselves. Think about that for a moment. The world is filled with men and women who once dreamed vividly, who once spoke of great visions, who once carried ambition burning in their chest like fire. But look closer, and you'll see that most of those fires are extinguished not by circumstance, not by lack of ability, but by something quieter, something crueler, the inability to rule their own impulses. It's not that they didn't know what to do. It's that they couldn't make themselves do it. And so, talent rots, potential wastes, entire futures collapse in silence, not because the dream was impossible, but because discipline was absent. You wake up with dreams in your chest, but you go to bed with regret in your bones. That's the cycle, isn't it? Morning arrives with hope. A vision of the life you could live if only you stayed consistent, if only you stayed focused. But by night, the vision is gone, replaced by guilt, by the knowledge that you scrolled instead of studied, indulged instead of trained, delayed instead of acted. Why? Because without discipline, chaos writes your life for you. And chaos doesn't care about your dreams. Chaos doesn't care about your potential. Chaos writes in wasted hours, in broken promises, in a fog of distractions so thick you forget who you were trying to become in the first place. And here's the truth that most people run from. Discipline isn't about alarms, or checklists, or some mechanical system you steal from a productivity book. Discipline is about identity. It is about who you are when no one is watching. It is about the private law you live by, the invisible code that shapes the man or woman you're becoming. Ask yourself, when the world is silent, when no one will applaud you, when there is no deadline to pressure you, who are you then? Because that answer will decide everything. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics understood something that modern neuroscience is only beginning to confirm. Without inner discipline, the human mind rots. It does not collapse suddenly. It decays slowly, like wood eaten by termites from the inside. Mornings are wasted, intentions slip, self-respect erodes, and one day you wake up a stranger to your own potential. The Stoics saw this danger with brutal clarity. They knew that life without discipline is not freedom, but a subtle form of slavery. Because if you do not govern yourself, you will be governed by your moods, by your cravings, by the trends of the crowd. They didn't chase motivation. They didn't wait for the perfect conditions to arrive. They lived by a code. They lived by law. A personal constitution anchored them when emotions surged, when life lost meaning, when the world tried to pull them into chaos. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote to himself daily not because he needed likes or praise, but because he knew, without order, his soul would scatter. Epictetus, once a slave, reminded his students that no man is free who is not master of himself. Seneca warned that it is not a short life we are given, but that we waste much of it. And so here we are, 20 centuries later, with more noise than ever before, with more distractions at our fingertips than Marcus Aurelius could have imagined. And yet, the solution remains the same. To build discipline, not as a punishment, not as a cold system, but as a sacred way of living, a rhythm that protects your clarity, your focus, your identity. This episode is not about hacks. It's not about tricks to squeeze 5 more minutes out of your day. It's about rewiring the way you think, act, and live. It's about turning discipline into something alive, something intentional, something so deeply rooted in your being that it stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like your nature. Whether you are an artist chasing mastery, a student fighting distraction, a leader under pressure, or simply a person trying to hold yourself together in a world that never stops pulling at you, these 12 Stoic laws will reshape the way you approach your time, your energy, and your inner world. They are not rules in the shallow sense. They are reminders. They are anchors. They are invitations to stop waiting for permission and to begin acting as the person you were meant to be. You will not need to feel ready. You will not need the world's applause. You will only need the courage to act, especially when it's hard, especially when it's quiet, especially when no one is watching. Because true discipline does not shout. It does not seek attention. It simply shows up, day after day, until one morning you look in the mirror and realize you didn't just build better habits, you built a new self. And if these words already speak to something deep inside you, then you belong here. This is true Stoic way, not a place for shallow motivation or empty slogans, but for men and women who are ready to take back their mind, who are ready to stand firm when the world shakes. If you're walking this path, quietly, steadily, relentlessly, subscribe now, because you shouldn't have to walk it alone. Law 1. Discipline is self-respect made visible. Discipline, at its core, is not about punishment, restriction, or forcing yourself into a rigid cage. It is something far more profound, far more personal. Discipline is self-respect made visible. It is the silent declaration you make to yourself when nobody else is around. It is the invisible proof that you value your own future enough to stop abandoning it. Think about those quiet crossroads you encounter each day, the ones no one else sees. The alarm rings at 6 in the morning. Your body aches, your mind whispers 100 excuses, and every cell screams for comfort. No one would know if you hit snooze. No one would blame you if you rolled over. Yet there is a moment, a sacred pause, where you either betray yourself or honor yourself. When you choose to rise, not because it feels good, not because applause is waiting, but simply because you promised yourself you would. That is discipline. That is respect. That is you treating your word as law. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Epictetus said it plainly, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Notice the depth of those words. He wasn't talking about freedom from chains or governments or external control. He was pointing to a deeper kind of slavery, the slavery to impulses, cravings, laziness, and moods. If you are ruled by whatever feels loudest in the moment, the craving for more sleep, the temptation to scroll, the pressure to belong, then you are not free. You are shackled. And discipline is the key that unlocks those chains. But here's the nuance most people miss. Discipline is not a war against yourself. It is not you hating who you are and trying to crush your instincts into submission. Real discipline is a reconciliation. It is a reunion with the part of you that remembers your potential. It is standing up inside your own life and saying, "I will not betray myself again." Consider another ordinary scene. You've committed to improving your health. You told yourself you'd be disciplined, and now you're sitting at a dinner table. Friends are indulging freely, laughing, passing desserts, pressuring you to join in. The pull is strong, not just for the food, but for the belonging. Yet discipline steps in. You breathe. You remember why you began. You make a conscious choice, not out of guilt or shame, but out of respect for the version of you that deserves to thrive. That small decision, invisible to most, is sacred. It is not about calories. It is about sovereignty. You are reclaiming authorship over your own life. This is what separates superficial discipline from Stoic discipline. Superficial discipline says, "I must push myself, I must fight myself, I must grind until I break." It is fueled by shame and insecurity. But Stoic discipline says, "I choose what strengthens me over what soothes me, not because I hate myself, but because I respect myself." That is the key distinction. True discipline does not shrink you. It aligns you. And when you begin to live this way, something remarkable shifts. You start carrying yourself differently. You don't announce it. You don't need to. When you respect your own time, others begin to respect it too. When you keep your promises to yourself, you walk with a quiet authority that no spotlight can create. You don't need arrogance because you know, deep down, that you can trust yourself. And in a world of endless noise and broken promises, that kind of integrity radiates like power. Of course, this is not easy. Discipline exposes your shadows. It reveals how often you've lied to yourself, how many times you've whispered tomorrow, how easily you've abandoned the dreams you swore mattered to you. That is why so many people avoid discipline. It is far easier to live in the illusion of later than to face the discomfort of now. But ask yourself this: how many more tomorrows can you afford to waste before you lose the very person you could have become? The truth is, each act of discipline is not just a task. It is a vote for the person you want to be. Every time you rise when you'd rather rest, you cast a vote for strength. Every time you resist the easy escape and choose the harder path, you cast a vote for clarity. Every time you choose alignment over impulse, you cast a vote for the man or woman you respect. And slowly, brick by brick, vote by vote, you build a self you can finally rely on. Let me bring it closer. Imagine a craftsman shaping wood. He does not argue with the wood, nor does he punish it. He respects its grain, its nature, and he works with it. Discipline is like that. It is not about destroying yourself, but about shaping yourself with respect. The tools are your daily choices. The workshop is your private moments. And the masterpiece is the life you carve, not for applause, but for integrity. So the next time your alarm rings or your will is tested at the table, or temptation whispers in the quiet, remember this: you are not choosing between comfort and discomfort. You are choosing between self-betrayal and self-respect. And when you choose self-respect often enough, discipline stops feeling like sacrifice. It becomes sacred. Because discipline, at its deepest level, is not about doing hard things for the sake of hardness. It is about proving to yourself that you are worth the effort. And when that truth finally sinks in, when your daily actions align with your highest values, you realize something profound. Freedom was never about doing whatever you want. Freedom was about having the strength to do what you must. And that strength, that quiet authority, that unshakable self-trust, it is born in the invisible moments when no one is watching, when it is just you, your choices, and your future waiting to be written. Law 2. Build discipline that matches your nature. Not all discipline is created equal, and not all discipline is yours. This is where so many people quietly sabotage themselves. They copy systems from others. They borrow morning routines from best-selling books. They watch a video of a billionaire rising at 4 a.m. and convince themselves that if they just mimic those patterns, they will inherit the same success. But discipline that does not match your nature will always feel like a cage. It might look good on paper. It might even impress people on social media. But if it doesn't flow with the grain of who you are, it won't last. And worse, it will make you resent the very idea of discipline. The Stoics knew this. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he was an emperor, responsible for armies, cities, laws. His discipline took the form of order, duty, and structure to anchor him in the chaos of power. Epictetus, born a slave, lived by a different rhythm. His discipline was born in restraint, in endurance, in the mastery of his inner world when his outer world was stripped away. Seneca, a statesman and philosopher, blended wealth with wisdom, balancing luxury with sharp reminders not to be ruled by it. They were all Stoics, yet their codes looked different. Because discipline, to be real, must be internal law, not borrowed costume. Imagine a soldier and a poet. The soldier thrives in structure, in hierarchy, in precision. He wakes early, trains his body, marches by the clock. His code is built on order and repetition. The poet, on the other hand, needs long hours of solitude. His discipline is not in early rising, but in carving space for reflection, in returning to the page each day, in building rituals that nourish creativity. The soldier's discipline looks like steel. The poet's looks like ink. Both are discipline, but neither can live well by the other's law. If the poet forces himself into the soldier's rigid mold, he suffocates. If the soldier abandons order for chaos, he falters. The wisdom lies not in imitation, but in alignment. And here's the question for you. Whose discipline are you living? yours or someone else's? Perhaps you've tried to wake at dawn because the world told you that's what high achievers do. Yet every morning you fail, and with each failure your self-respect erodes. You call yourself lazy, weak, broken. But maybe the problem isn't your willpower. Maybe the problem is the system. Maybe your natural rhythm burns brightest at night. Maybe your most creative energy awakens under the moon, not the sun. In that case, discipline would not mean forcing yourself into someone else's morning. It would mean building structure that honors your night. That is what the Stoics meant by living according to nature. Not just the nature of the cosmos, but your own inner nature. This doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook. Stoic discipline was never about indulgence. It was about sustainability. It was about creating a form that you can return to, even when life is heavy. Discipline is not about superiority, it is about congruence. About building a structure that both reflects who you are and gently stretches you toward who you want to be. Let's make it practical. Suppose your mind works in deep waves of focus rather than short bursts. For you, discipline might mean guarding long stretches of uninterrupted time, eliminating distractions, setting boundaries with people who steal your attention. Another person might thrive in sprints. For them, discipline means mastering the art of intense, focused bursts followed by recovery. Neither system is right for everyone. Both can be wrong if they are forced upon the wrong person. Or take movement. Some people find strength in rigid gym routines, lifting the same weight at the same hour. Others burn out quickly under such rigidity. For them, discipline might look like hiking, running, martial arts. A discipline that engages both body and spirit. Again, not about which is better, but which is yours. The tragedy is that most people never stop to ask, what kind of discipline actually fuels me? They inherit systems, they copy idols, they chase trends. And in the process, they lose touch with the deeper question, who am I? And what law do I need to live by to become myself? When discipline matches your nature, something profound happens. It stops feeling like a war. You stop dragging yourself into cages that suffocate you. You stop resenting the word discipline itself. Instead, you begin to flow. Your structure feels like home. Your routine feels like rhythm. Your code feels like truth. But don't mistake this for comfort. Discipline will always stretch you. It will always demand more of you than you want to give. The point is not to escape difficulty, but to choose the kind of difficulty that refines you instead of breaking you. A soldier must endure drills. A poet must endure solitude. A leader must endure the weight of responsibility. A student must endure the pain of focus. Each is hard, but each is theirs. So pause for a moment. Look at your life. Ask yourself honestly, am I living inside my own law, or am I trapped inside someone else's? Am I respecting my rhythm, my strengths, my blind spots? Or am I measuring myself by borrowed codes, wondering why I feel suffocated? Because the freedom you're looking for will never be found in copying another man's system. It will be found in the courage to design your own. And that's what discipline truly is. Not a borrowed cage, but an inner architecture. Not an imitation, but a code written in the language of your nature. At True Stoic Way, we explore not how to copy others, but how to uncover your own code, the discipline that is yours, the one that feels like home, the one that carries you forward not for a season, but for a lifetime. Law 3. Without order, you pay in silence. Disorder rarely screams. It does not announce itself with explosions or chaos that you can't ignore. Disorder whispers. It seeps in slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you wake up and realize you've been paying the price all along. Look around your life. The pile of clothes in the corner you keep saying you'll deal with tomorrow. The unread messages stacked in your inbox, silently accusing you every time you open your phone. The project started but never finished. The goals written down but left untouched. The mornings wasted because you couldn't decide where to begin. None of these things seem catastrophic on their own. None of them feel like failure. But together, they are erosion. They are the quiet rot of a life lived without order. Seneca saw this danger 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Notice the wisdom hidden there. Life feels short, not because the years are too few, but because disorder steals them in fragments. A few minutes lost here, an hour lost there, a day drifted away in reactivity, and suddenly decades slip through your fingers. Disorder doesn't take your life in one dramatic strike. It drains you drop by drop until you are too heavy to lift yourself. Think about your mornings. You wake without a plan. You check your phone, scrolling through other people's lives. Notifications demand your attention. Someone's problem becomes your problem. By noon, you've been pulled in 10 directions you never chose. You are exhausted, yet nothing meaningful has been built. That is disorder at work. It doesn't slap you in the face. It just redirects you subtly, until your time belongs to everyone but you. Or picture your mind as a room. In one corner, a pile of clothes, each piece representing a task delayed. In another, a stack of unread letters, each one a conversation avoided. The table is covered with crumbs of intentions never followed through. At first, you can still walk through the mess. But over time, the clutter grows, narrowing the path, suffocating the space, stealing the air. That is what happens when you live without order. Your mental architecture collapses under the weight of things you've tolerated. But let me be clear, order is not rigidity. Order is not about micromanaging every hour, about stripping life of its spontaneity. Order is about freedom. It is about creating containers strong enough to protect what matters, boundaries that defend your focus, rhythms that calm your nervous system. A morning routine is not a prison, it is a rescue. A weekly reflection is not a chore, it is a compass. A clear workspace is not obsession, it is oxygen. The Stoics understood that the world is chaos by nature. You cannot control the storms, but you can control the harbor. And without a harbor, the storms will own you. Discipline, therefore, begins with order. Not external perfection, but internal alignment. The man who lives without order spends his life reacting. He answers every call, indulges every impulse, says yes to every request, and in the end, he belongs to everyone but himself. That is not freedom. That is invisible slavery. Consider how disorder punishes you slowly. You skip your journal today, and nothing collapses. You miss your workout, and the world goes on. You postpone the hard conversation, and life continues. But day by day, the cost accumulates. You grow heavier, duller, less alive. You carry the weight of unfinished business like stones in your pockets. You smile in public but feel drained in private. Disorder never announces itself, but it always collects the bill. Now think of the opposite. Imagine starting your day with order. You wake, and instead of reaching for your phone, you sit in silence for 5 minutes. You breathe, you journal, you decide your first task before the world decides for you. That small structure shifts everything. By noon, you've already completed what matters most. The rest of the day may still bring noise, but you are grounded. You are no longer reacting, you are directing. That is order. That is freedom. Even creativity thrives in order. A poet who writes without schedule eventually stops writing. An artist without boundaries drowns in distraction. Structure is not the enemy of inspiration. It is the channel through which inspiration flows. When you create containers for your time, you give your gifts space to emerge. The Stoics called this living with intention, not letting life scatter you, but gathering your energy and pointing it like an arrow. Ask yourself now, what have you been tolerating? What disorder have you been carrying that quietly drains you? Maybe it's the clutter in your space, the conversation you've avoided, the dream you've postponed because you fear beginning. Whatever it is, name it. Because until you name it, it will keep draining you in silence. Order is not about controlling everything. It is about controlling enough. Enough to protect your mind, enough to safeguard your energy, enough to stop the slow erosion of your soul. And the truth is, without order, discipline has no ground to stand on. A soldier cannot train without a routine. A writer cannot create without a ritual. A leader cannot lead without clarity. The forms may differ, but the principle is the same. Without order, you pay. Always. So build your containers. Protect your mornings. Guard your focus. Design spaces that nourish your mind instead of suffocating it. Because order is not about perfection. It is about preservation. It is about creating freedom through design. And if this speaks to you, if you feel the weight of disorder in your own life, then know this: you are not broken. You are simply unstructured. And structure is something you can create. At True Stoic Way, we do not preach rigid formulas. We teach you to reclaim order in a way that frees you, not cages you. Because the cost of disorder is always paid in silence, but the reward of order is always felt in freedom. Law 4. Success can make you soft. Stay sharp. Success is seductive. It whispers in your ear that the climb is over, that the work is done, that you have finally arrived. And that is exactly when the real danger begins. Not in failure, but in comfort. Failure sharpens you. It keeps you hungry, alert, aware of what is at stake. But success lulls you to sleep. It convinces you that the habits which built your strength are no longer necessary. It tells you, you've earned a break. Not a rest, a break from discipline itself. And that is how men lose their edge. Not with dramatic collapse, but with quiet complacency that eats away at them like rust on iron. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, emperor of Rome. He could have surrendered to indulgence, to laziness, to arrogance. No one could have stopped him. Yet night after night, he wrote in his journal reminders to himself not to drift, not to soften, not to surrender to the luxury around him. Why? Because he knew the truth most people refuse to see. External success is never the final victory. Internal strength is. And that strength requires constant sharpening. Look at your own life. How many times have you built momentum only to lose it the moment results appeared? You worked hard for the promotion, and the day you got it, you started sleeping in. You disciplined yourself into the best shape of your life, then rewarded yourself with weeks of indulgence that erased months of progress. You saved money, reached stability, and then began spending carelessly because you thought the danger had passed. That is the trap of success. You forget that what got you here will not keep you here. There's nothing wrong with rest. Rest is part of the process, but there's a difference between rest and surrender. Rest renews you. Surrender dissolves you. Rest is intentional. Surrender is unconscious. Rest sharpens the blade. Surrender lets it rust. Complacency doesn't arrive with a bang. It seeps in through little choices. You skip the morning routine, just once. You miss the workout, only today. You stop journaling because you're too busy. And soon, the habits that built you are gone. The momentum fades, the hunger weakens. You are surviving off past effort, not present intention. That is when you become soft. Think about a warrior who sharpens his sword every day. The blade gleams, deadly and precise. Then one day, he sets it aside. He thinks, it's sharp enough, I'll be fine. A week passes. Then a month, the blade dulls. The warrior still carries it proudly, but when the battle comes, it fails him. That is what success does if you stop sharpening yourself. It tricks you into thinking the battle is over, when in truth, life never stops demanding your edge. The Stoics warned against this. They knew that the moment you think you've arrived, you've already started to decline. They reminded themselves daily that ease is not the goal, growth is. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, Do not waste the rest of your life wondering what a good man should be. Be one. He understood that discipline is not a season. It is a lifelong craft. So how do you stay sharp? By remembering that success is not a finish line, it is a checkpoint. And the moment you reach it, the question is not, can I relax? The question is, what needs refining now? Where am I beginning to coast? Where am I losing the hunger that built me? Maybe it's in your relationships. You stopped nurturing them because you assumed they'd sustain themselves. Maybe it's in your learning. You read less, convinced you already know enough. Maybe it's in your body. You once trained with fire, but now you justify every indulgence because you've earned it. None of these look dramatic, but together they form the slow death of the man you once were. The truth is harsh but liberating. Discipline built you, and only discipline will keep you. Comfort will never protect you. Complacency will never sharpen you. Ease will never sustain you. The habits, the rituals, the order that carried you to success are the same ones you must carry forward if you want to remain strong. Think of it this way. Climbing a mountain demands one kind of effort. Staying on top demands another. The air is thinner. The balance more delicate. One careless step and you fall. That is what success feels like. The higher you rise, the sharper you must remain. So pause now and examine yourself. Where have you grown soft? Where have you traded discipline for comfort? Where have you mistaken surrender for rest? You do not need shame to answer these questions. You only need honesty. Because the moment you see it, you can return, you can recommit. You can pick up the blade and sharpen it again. And if you ever forget, come back to this truth. The world will not remember how hard you once worked. It will only see who you are now. Yesterday's discipline is gone. Today's discipline is what counts. So do not let success dissolve you. Let it refine you. Use it as a platform to build higher, not as an excuse to sink lower. Stay sharp, stay awake, stay disciplined. Because the edge you carry is not just for you. It is for everyone who depends on you, everyone who watches you, everyone who will be shaped by the example you set. Remember, discipline built you. Only discipline will keep you. Law 5. Don't wait for motivation. Move without it. How many days of your life have been lost waiting to feel ready? Waiting for the right spark, the right energy, the right mood. You told yourself, I'll start tomorrow. You promised, once I feel inspired, then I'll act. And yet tomorrow came, and the inspiration never did. The truth is simple but brutal. Motivation is a liar. It is inconsistent, unreliable. And if you build your life on it, you will waste years drifting in circles. The Stoics knew this long before modern psychology confirmed it. They never told themselves, I'll do the right thing when I feel like it. No, Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice the order: identity first, action second, emotion last. You decide who you want to be, you act accordingly, and the feelings catch up later. That is the Stoic way. Picture a craftsman, a sculptor. He does not wake each morning asking, do I feel like creating today? He does not wait for inspiration to descend from the heavens. He walks into his workshop, he picks up his tools, and he begins. The first cuts may feel clumsy, the first strokes uninspired. But somewhere in the work, something shifts. His focus sharpens, his momentum builds, and the art begins to take form. Inspiration does not come before action. It is born from it. Now compare that to the modern habit of waiting. We wait for the perfect time to start the business. We wait until we're in the right mood to exercise. We wait until energy strikes to write the book, to study, to speak up, to change. But life does not wait. Time does not wait. And every day you spend waiting for the right feeling is a day stolen from your potential. The mind loves to negotiate. It whispers, just one more hour of rest, just one more day to prepare. You're not in the right headspace yet. These thoughts sound logical, but they are not. They are delay tactics, comfort disguising itself as reason. And if you let them rule you, you will never move. Because the truth is, the part of you that craves ease will always be louder than the part that craves growth. Discipline means ignoring the noise and obeying the mission. Think about the first step of anything. The first breath in meditation. The first push-up after months of neglect. The first sentence written on an empty page. That first step always feels heavy, awkward, almost unbearable. But once the body is in motion, the mind begins to follow. The resistance fades. The momentum grows. And what seemed impossible 5 minutes ago becomes inevitable. That is the secret. Action precedes emotion. You do not move because you are motivated. You become motivated because you move. Let's make it practical. You don't want to work out? Put on your shoes, walk outside. 5 minutes, no more. You don't want to write? Open the document. Type one sentence, even if it's terrible. You don't want to face the uncomfortable task? Set a timer for 10 minutes and begin. The goal is not perfection. The goal is initiation. Because once you start, the battle is already half won. The Stoics trained themselves not to consult their mood before moving. They consulted their principles. If it was right, they did it. If it was necessary, they acted. Feelings were not their compass. Virtue was. This is why Marcus Aurelius could wake each morning and remind himself, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. He did not wait to feel like it. He chose to act because it was his duty. And here lies the paradox. The more you wait for motivation, the weaker you become. Every time you surrender to the lie of not today, you teach yourself that your feelings hold the power. But every time you move without permission from your emotions, you teach yourself strength. You remind your mind who is in charge. Discipline grows, self-trust deepens, and soon you no longer need to wait for readiness. You create it. Ask yourself, what have you been postponing because you don't feel ready? The project you've delayed for months. The difficult conversation you've avoided? The healthy habit you keep promising you'll begin when the time is right? What if you stopped waiting altogether? What if you stopped needing to feel ready and simply acted? Because here is the truth no one wants to face. Readiness is a myth. No one ever feels perfectly ready. The sculptor does not. The writer does not. The warrior does not. They move first. And the act of moving creates the state of readiness. So the next time your mind tells you to wait, to pause, to delay, remember this law. Don't wait for motivation. Move without it. Lace up your shoes. Write the sentence. Make the call. Take the step. Because your life will not change in a single burst of inspiration. It will change in the countless small moments where you chose action over mood, movement over hesitation, discipline over delay. That is the Stoic way. Action first. Emotion follows. Law 6. Live by conscious choice, not auto-reaction. How much of your life is truly chosen? And how much of it is just noise you've inherited? This question cuts deeper than it first appears. Because if you stop and examine honestly, you'll see how much of what you call your life is not really yours. The way you wake up and reach for your phone without thinking. The way you scroll through feeds you never decided were worth your time. The way you chase goals that were never truly yours. They were your parents' expectations, your culture's definition of success, the unspoken pressure of peers. Most of us are not living. We are reacting. Reacting to demands we never questioned. Reacting to roles we never auditioned for. Reacting to impulses so old and so ingrained that we mistake them for identity. Carl Jung said it with ruthless clarity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that. How much of your life has been shaped not by conscious choice, but by unconscious patterns? You procrastinate because somewhere inside, you believe you're not good enough. You overwork because you learned as a child that achievement is the only way to earn love. You avoid conflict not because you're peaceful, but because you fear rejection. None of these are conscious choices. They are scripts. And you've been performing them so long you've begun to believe they are who you are. But here's the truth. They are not you. They are simply the old programming you've never stopped to question. The Stoics warned us about this drift into unconscious living. They saw how easy it is to let external forces dictate your inner world, moods, trends, crowds, cravings. They taught that discipline at its highest form is not just about effort, but about awareness. It is about slowing down enough to ask, is this mine? Did I choose this, or did I inherit it without thinking? Consider your mornings again. Do you begin with silence, or do you begin by reacting to the loudest thing on your screen? One path is conscious, the other is automatic. Or take your career. Are you working where you are because you deliberately chose it, because it aligns with your deepest values? Or did you drift there because it was expected, because it was safe, because it was simply the next step in someone else's design? Living on autopilot feels safe. It feels familiar. It's predictable, but that safety is an illusion. Because when you don't consciously design your life, someone else designs it for you. The advertisers, the culture, the crowd, the expectations of people who will not live with your consequences. That is not freedom. That is quiet imprisonment. Stoic discipline calls you to break this pattern, to live by conscious choice, not auto-reaction, to pause before you say yes, to breathe before you lash out, to ask, does this serve me? Or does it just feel familiar? That is what Marcus Aurelius practiced when he wrote, every night, reflections on where he fell short, where he drifted, where he reacted instead of chose. He knew that freedom was not about doing whatever impulse arrived. Freedom was about aligning every action with reason and virtue. Think about anger. How many times have you reacted instantly, regretting it moments later? That is auto-reaction. Now think of the discipline it takes to pause, to see the anger rising, and to choose curiosity instead. That is conscious choice. The difference between the two is the difference between slavery and sovereignty. Or think about distraction. You feel a pull to check your phone, not because you chose to, but because the habit is wired deep. One path leaves you fragmented. The other, pausing, asking, what do I really need right now, leads you back to presence. That is the discipline of awareness. This is the heart of Law 6. To stop living as a puppet pulled by strings you never noticed. To cut those strings one by one and replace them with choices. To sort through your life, keep what aligns, release what doesn't, and redesign what must be rebuilt. Not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. Because the hardest truth is this: if you don't choose your life consciously, you will drift unconsciously. And drift always leads to regret. So let me ask you, where are you still living by default, not design? Where are you letting fear masquerade as humility, comfort disguise itself as destiny, old wounds dictate new choices? Where in your life are you still reacting instead of creating? You don't have to throw everything away. You don't have to reinvent your world in one dramatic gesture. But you must begin noticing, begin choosing, begin taking back ownership of the little moments. The morning routine, the words you speak, the promises you keep, the way you respond when life pokes you. Because discipline is not just doing hard things. It is doing the right hard things, the ones that shape you into the person you respect. And once you taste that freedom, once you begin living by conscious choice instead of old scripts, everything changes. You no longer chase life, you direct it. You no longer react blindly. You respond wisely. You stop being a passenger and you take the wheel. That is Stoic discipline. That is sovereignty. Law 7. What you do in private defines you in public. Character is not built under the spotlight. It is built in the shadows. Not in the moments when the world is clapping, but in the hours when no one is watching. We live in an age obsessed with performance. Social media rewards visibility, not integrity. The culture praises highlight reels, not the daily grind. People know how to post the quote, but not how to live it. They can talk about discipline, strength, virtue, but when the door closes, when the audience is gone, when the applause fades, who are they then? That is the true test. Anyone can deliver a powerful speech, but do they listen with patience at home when their child interrupts them? Anyone can preach discipline in front of a camera, but do they hold their promises to themselves when temptation whispers? Anyone can post about self-mastery, but what happens when no one checks in, when no deadline looms, when the only accountability is the man in the mirror? That is where character is carved. Marcus Aurelius understood this. Though he was emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive, he did not spend his nights writing public speeches for praise. He spent them journaling in private, reminding himself daily of the man he wanted to be. Not for the crowd, not for history, for himself. He knew that power could corrupt him, that success could soften him, that ego could blind him. His journal was his anchor, not a performance, but a private discipline. A conversation with his conscience. Because here is the truth. Who you are in private inevitably becomes who you are in public. The mask always slips. The cracks always show. And when they do, the world will see not what you pretended to be, but what you truly are. But the opposite is also true. When your private life is aligned, your public life flows with ease. You don't need to act because you are not acting. You don't need to convince others of your strength because you've already proven it to yourself in silence. That quiet self-trust radiates in ways no performance can fake. Self-trust is a superpower. When you know you will keep your own word, not just when people are watching, but when you are alone, you move differently. Your posture changes. Your eyes change. You speak with a calm authority that cannot be faked. People feel it. They may not know why, but they know they can trust you because you trust yourself. But the reverse is just as powerful and dangerous. When you repeatedly break your own word in private, when you cut corners, when you promise yourself and then fail to follow through, you carry that failure with you. It lingers. It leaks out in your tone, your body language, your choices. Deep down you know, I cannot rely on myself. And that knowledge corrodes your confidence like acid, silently, daily. This is why Stoic discipline is not about impressing the crowd. It is about impressing upon your soul the weight of your choices. It is about treating the quiet, private moments as sacred training grounds for who you are becoming. Think of the ordinary decisions no one sees. The alarm at dawn, the food on your plate, the words you speak when frustration rises, the time you choose to study instead of scroll. Each one feels invisible, but together they form your character. These moments are the roots beneath the surface. And the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. A man without private discipline may shine briefly in public, but he will collapse under pressure. His words will sound hollow, his confidence brittle, his influence short-lived. But a man who has built himself in silence does not need performance. His strength is not a mask, but a reality. He does not crumble when the spotlight shifts, because the spotlight was never his foundation. So ask yourself, who are you when no one is around? When the camera is off, the door is closed, and the only witness is your conscience, how do you act? That is the version of you that matters most. That is the version of you that is building or breaking your future. And here's the liberating part. You don't need the world's permission to start. You don't need applause to validate you. You can begin right now in the privacy of your own life. One promise kept. One temptation resisted. One moment of honesty when no one else will ever know. Those small private victories are bricks in the foundation of unshakable character. Because at the end of the day, the world may or may not remember your speeches, your posts, your performances. but you will live every day with the man or woman you built in private. And if that person is trustworthy, aligned, disciplined, then the public life will take care of itself. So don't chase validation. Don't perform for the crowd. Build quietly, align privately. Respect your own word when no one is watching. Because in time, your private victories will echo publicly, without effort, without performance. That is the law. What you do in private defines you in public. Law 8. Tame the dopamine. Rewire the reward. If your mind feels restless, scattered, unable to focus for more than a few minutes, you are not broken. You are hijacked. We are living in a world engineered for distraction. Every notification, every scroll, every flashing icon is designed to flood your brain with dopamine, the neurotransmitter of novelty, of just one more. What once was the brain's natural compass for learning and growth has been turned against you. You are rewarded, not for effort, not for mastery, not for depth, but for checking, clicking, swiping, consuming. And the most dangerous part? It feels normal. You tell yourself, I'll only check for a second. 30 minutes vanish. You say, just one more video. Hours disappear. And when it's over, you don't feel stronger. You don't feel nourished. You feel hollow. Because the brain was fed noise, not substance. The hit was quick, but the satisfaction was empty. The Stoics, though they lived centuries before smartphones, understood this pattern. They warned against chasing shallow pleasures, against confusing stimulation with fulfillment. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Today, we don't just waste time, we train our brains to crave waste. We rehearse distraction until it becomes identity. But here is the Stoic truth. Not all rewards are equal. Some are shallow, loud, fleeting. Others are deep, quiet, lasting. The work of discipline is learning to rewire your reward system, to stop chasing crumbs of quick dopamine, and to start craving the feast of meaningful satisfaction. Think about mastery. When you commit to a craft, the progress is slow. Writing a page a day, practicing scales, lifting weights, the rewards are delayed. No pings, no likes, no quick validation. But then something shifts. Weeks later, you realize you've written 50 pages. Months later, you feel your body stronger. Years later, you've built something that cannot be erased with a swipe. That satisfaction is not cheap, it is earned. And because it is earned, it stays. Compare that to the scroll. You refresh the feed. 100 micro-pleasures flicker past. A joke, a video, a post, a like. Each one feels good for a second. But when you close the screen, what remains? Nothing. The brain craves another hit. You are left restless, not restored. That is the poverty of shallow rewards. They leave you hungrier than before. So how do we fight back? Not by rejecting pleasure, but by upgrading it. The Stoics would not say, deny yourself joy. They would say, choose the joy that strengthens you. Replace the easy high with the deeper satisfaction of completion. Replace the quick thrill of distraction with the slow pride of mastery. Replace the empty buzz of being liked with the solid weight of keeping your word. This requires intention. You must design your environment so that the path of least resistance leads you toward depth, not shallowness. Put your phone away during meals. Turn it off during deep work. Replace the mindless scroll with a book, with a journal, with silence. These may feel like small acts, but they are acts of rebellion in a world built to keep you addicted. And something remarkable happens when you persist. The brain begins to rewire. What once felt unbearable, sitting in silence, focusing for an hour, finishing a task without interruption, starts to feel rewarding. You begin to crave progress instead of distraction. You start to associate pleasure with presence, with effort, with completion. That is when discipline becomes lighter. Not because it is easy, but because it finally feels meaningful. Let me make it practical. Start with journaling. At the end of the day, instead of scrolling, write down what you built, what you learned, what you resisted. That act gives your brain a different kind of reward: reflection, progress, clarity. Or guard focus time. Choose 1 hour in your day where the phone is off, notifications silenced, and your only task is the work that matters most. That 1 hour will bring more satisfaction than 5 hours of fragmented distraction. And when the urge to scroll comes, replace it with mastery. Pick up the instrument. Write the paragraph. Study the subject. Do the work that compounds into something lasting. This is not about becoming a monk, nor about rejecting all pleasure. It is about refusing to let your brain be trained into weakness. It is about reclaiming your biology from an industry that profits from your attention. It is about teaching yourself once again that the deepest satisfaction is found not in what is quick, but in what is earned. So pause and ask yourself, where am I still chasing shallow dopamine? Where have I let cheap satisfaction hijack my mind? And more importantly, what would happen if I replaced those spikes with silence, with presence, with rituals that built me instead of broke me? Because your brain is not broken, it is simply conditioned. And the same way it was trained to crave distraction, it can be trained to crave discipline. That is the Stoic Law. Tame the dopamine, rewire the reward. Do not settle for crumbs. Build the feast. Law 9. Structure is a form of mercy. Most people think of structure as a cage. They hear the word and imagine rigid calendars, suffocating schedules, and a lifeless routine that strips all spontaneity from existence. But that is not what real structure is. Real structure is not punishment. It is mercy. Think of it this way: chaos is the default. Left on its own, life scatters you in 1,000 directions. Demands pull at you, distractions tempt you, moods shift like the wind. Without structure, you do not experience freedom. You experience fragmentation. You experience exhaustion. You collapse into bed at night having done 1,000 little things, yet nothing that mattered. You are busy but lost, active but unfulfilled. Seneca saw this long ago. He warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And where does that waste come from? Not laziness alone, but from lack of clarity, from drifting, from letting the day unfold by accident instead of by design. Time is squandered not only in idleness, but in directionless activity. That is why structure is not your enemy. It is your rescue. Imagine 2 mornings. In the first, you wake without plan. You check your phone, react to notifications, answer whatever demands arrive. Hours slip by in fragments. By noon, you are already tired, pulled into tasks you never chose. The day owns you, not the other way around. That is not freedom. That is low-level suffering disguised as flexibility. Now imagine another morning. You wake and resist the screen. You breathe in silence, maybe stretch, maybe write. You know your first task, and you begin it without debate. By noon, what mattered most is already done. The rest of the day may still bring noise, but it cannot steal your foundation. That is structure. And far from being a prison, it feels like peace. This is the paradox most people never see. Structure does not confine you, it frees you. It frees your attention from endless decisions. It frees your energy from scattering. It frees your soul from the anxiety of disorder. Structure is the architecture that allows your highest self to actually show up. Even creativity thrives on structure. A painter may look free, but notice her discipline. The time she shows up at the easel, the rituals that prepare her mind, the boundaries she guards against distraction. A writer may speak of inspiration, but his books are born from daily structure, the same hours, the same desk, the same routine repeated until pages accumulate. Structure does not kill creativity, it channels it. Without a container, even chaos has no form. The Stoics understood this well. They practiced rituals not because they were rigid, but because they were wise. Morning reflections, evening reviews, set times for study, boundaries around pleasure. These were not cages, but keys. Keys to clarity, keys to mastery, keys to peace. So the real question is not whether you have structure, but what kind. Because if you do not choose structure, chaos will choose it for you. Your phone will dictate it. The demands of others will dictate it. Your impulses will dictate it. And in that case, you are not free. You are enslaved by whatever shouts the loudest. To build structure is to practice mercy on yourself. It is to say, I care enough about my life not to waste it. I care enough about my mind to protect it. I care enough about my energy to direct it with intention. This doesn't mean filling every hour with tasks. Real structure is not about doing more. It is about doing less, better. It is about carving away noise until what remains is signal. It is about guarding sacred time for what truly matters: your work, your relationships, your rest, your growth. So ask yourself, what would change if I treated structure not as prison, but as love? What if the morning routine was not about control, but about mercy for my mind? What if the evening ritual was not about rigidity, but about peace for my soul? Because life will always pull at you. The world will always try to scatter you. Without structure, you will spend your years chasing pieces. With structure, you gather them into a whole. That is why discipline requires order. And that is why order, far from being suffocating, is an act of love. So build the containers, create the rhythm, protect the time. Not to impress anyone, not to perform for the crowd, but because your life is worth more than noise. Because clarity is worth guarding. Because peace is worth designing. Remember this, structure is not a prison. It is a form of mercy. Law 10. Act like the person you are becoming. Every decision you make is not just about the moment. It is a vote. A silent ballot cast for the kind of person you are becoming. Most people think discipline is about behavior alone. Wake early, work hard, resist temptation. But discipline at its highest level is not about behavior. It is about identity. The Stoics understood this. They weren't simply telling you to do the right thing. They wanted you to become the kind of person for whom the right thing was natural. Marcus Aurelius, each night in his journal, was not just tracking tasks. He was asking himself, am I closer to the man I want to be, or have I drifted? His writing was not performance. It was a mirror. A way to examine not only what he had done, but who he was becoming. He knew that identity is not static. It is sculpted. Action by action, day by day. Think about it. A writer who waits for inspiration is not a writer. A writer writes even when the words are clumsy. An athlete who trains only when motivated is not an athlete. An athlete trains even when the body resists. A leader who acts with integrity only when it is easy is not a leader. A leader chooses integrity when it costs something. Each act is a vote. Each choice rehearses a self. The danger is this: every time you break your word to yourself, you cast a vote for the old you. Every time you choose comfort over courage, impulse over principle, delay over duty, you rehearse weakness. And slowly, without noticing, you become a stranger to the stronger version of yourself you once dreamed of. But the opposite is also true. Every time you rise when you'd rather rest, you cast a vote for strength. Every time you do the work without applause, you cast a vote for resilience. Every time you keep your word in silence, you cast a vote for trustworthiness. And brick by brick, vote by vote, you build a self you can rely on. Here's the liberating truth. You don't need to wait until you feel like the person you want to be. You must act like him first. You don't become confident and then speak with clarity. You practice speaking with clarity and confidence follows. You don't become disciplined and then rise at dawn. You rise at dawn and discipline grows. Identity is not waiting inside you, fully formed. It is forged by repetition. Think of it like training. No one lifts a weight once and calls himself strong. No one runs a single mile and calls himself an athlete. Strength is built in the unseen repetitions. And identity works the same way. You practice it until what was once effort becomes nature. But this process is uncomfortable. It requires you to leave behind the familiar identity, the one that feels safe, even if it keeps you small. That is why many resist it. They cling to old habits because those habits protect them from the risk of change. But growth always demands identity death. You must give up who you've been to become who you could be. So pause and ask, who are you trying to become? Not in theory, not 5 years from now, in the daily details, in the choices you make when no one is watching. Are your actions aligned with that version, or are they in conflict? Because you cannot dream one life and practice another. If you want to be a writer, write even badly. If you want to be healthy, honor your training like a sacred appointment. If you want to be calm, practice the pause when anger rises. If you want to be wise, carve space for reflection daily. Do not wait. Do not pretend. Do not perform. Practice. Act as if the future self you respect is already here. And one day, without realizing when it happened, you will have become him. The Stoics never waited for perfection. They lived by rehearsal. Marcus Aurelius did not write his journal to appear virtuous. He wrote to practice virtue. Epictetus did not speak of freedom as theory. He practiced mastery of his impulses every day. They knew that each small act was not wasted. Each was a chisel stroke shaping their identity. So remember this law. Every action is a vote. You are building a self, brick by brick, choice by choice. You cannot always control outcomes, but you can always decide the kind of person you are rehearsing. And when you finally understand that, discipline ceases to feel like drudgery. It becomes sacred. Each choice becomes meaningful. Each small victory is no longer about today, but about eternity. Act like the person you are becoming. Because sooner than you think, that is exactly who you will be. Law 11. Every minute is a brick in the temple of your life. You are given 1,440 minutes each day. That is 1,440 bricks. Silent bricks, invisible currency. And the question is never, do I have time? The question is always, what am I building with it? Because whether you notice or not, every minute is being spent. Every brick is being laid. Some with intention, some by accident. And one day, you will find yourself standing inside the temple you have built. A temple of strength or a temple of waste. A sanctuary or a ruin. Seneca saw this with a clarity that still burns through the centuries. He wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy." Think about that. People will lock their doors at night, protect their money, defend their possessions. But time? They give it away freely, thoughtlessly, as if it were infinite. Yet time is the one thing that cannot be replaced. A stolen coin can be earned again. A broken tool can be fixed. But a wasted hour is gone forever. Let's make it real. 30 minutes of scrolling each day, harmless, right? But by the end of a year, you've lost 11 full days of your life. Not resting, not connecting, not creating. Just escaping. 11 days that could have been bricks in the temple of your growth, your craft, your relationships. Instead, they were scattered into the void, never to return. And this is the tragedy. People think they are waiting to live, but in truth, they are already spending their life, minute by minute, brick by brick. The temple is being built whether you are conscious of it or not. The only question is it strong or is it crumbling? Now don't misunderstand. This is not about productivity for productivity's sake. You are not a machine. The goal is not to cram every minute with tasks until you collapse. The Stoics were not obsessed with busyness. They were obsessed with intentionality, with living in alignment, with using time deliberately instead of losing it carelessly. There is a difference between rest and waste. Rest renews you. Waste depletes you. A walk in the evening, a deep conversation, a quiet meal. These are bricks in your temple too. Because they restore your spirit. They strengthen your relationships. They align with your values. But mindless scrolling, endless distraction, shallow indulgence, those bricks are cracked. Stack enough of them, and the temple collapses under its own weight. The Stoics practiced daily reflection precisely because of this truth. Marcus Aurelius would ask himself each night, what did I do well? Where did I fall short? What can I do better tomorrow? That was not just journaling. That was inspection of the temple. That was measurement of the bricks. He understood that excellence is not built in a single act, but in the accumulation of intentional minutes. So pause and examine your own days. What are you building with your minutes? When you say yes to distraction, what kind of brick are you laying? When you honor your training, your craft, your word, what kind of temple is rising in silence? Because here is the harsh reality. There is no neutral. Every minute either strengthens the structure or weakens it. Every choice either aligns with the self you want to become or pulls you further away. You are always building. The question is, are you building something worthy of your life? Think about someone you admire deeply. A mentor, a craftsman, a stoic figure. Their strength was not forged in one dramatic moment. It was sculpted minute by minute. The way they rose each day, the way they handled discomfort, the way they gave attention to their work, their family, their mind. What you admire is not a highlight. It is architecture. And you are doing the same right now with every decision, with every brick. So treat your minutes as sacred, not in the sense that you must obsess over every second, but in the sense that you refuse to waste them unconsciously. If you rest, truly rest. If you work, truly work. If you connect, be present. Do not fragment your minutes into pieces too small to matter, because together, those pieces are your life. Ask yourself, if my temple of life were built from the last 30 days of my minutes, what would it look like? Would it be solid, grounded, worthy? Or would it be hollow, fragile, on the verge of collapse? Remember, 1,440 bricks each day. You cannot save them. You can only spend them. And every brick laid with intention makes the temple stronger. So live deliberately. Build carefully. Because one day, you will walk through the halls of the temple you've built, and there will be no hiding from its walls. Law 12. If you don't measure it, it's not growth. The final law is simple, but it cuts deeper than most are willing to admit. If you don't measure it, it's not growth. We love to think we are improving. We love the story that we are becoming stronger, wiser, more disciplined. But without evidence, it is just a comforting illusion. Growth that is not measured is growth that is assumed. And assumptions are fragile. The Stoics knew this. That is why they measured themselves. Not with numbers on a chart, but with honest reflection, with daily inspection of their own souls. Marcus Aurelius journaled not because he loved writing, but because he needed a mirror. Each night he asked himself, where did I live with reason? Where did I fall into impulse? Where can I practice more courage tomorrow? This was not self-punishment, it was self-measurement. It was a compass for growth. Because here is the truth, what gets tracked gets respected. You track your money because you respect it. You track your health because you value it. But your habits, your thoughts, your time, most let those slip through unmeasured, unexamined, and therefore unchanged. Practical wisdom says, measure what matters. Want discipline? Track the actions that embody it. Did you rise when you said you would? Did you train when it was hard? Did you keep your word when no one noticed? These are not abstract ideas. They are measurable behaviors. And each measurement is not judgment, but feedback. Think of a craftsman. He does not simply hope the table he builds will be straight. He measures it. Again and again, he checks the angles, the cuts, the weight. Not because he doubts himself, but because he respects the work too much to leave it to chance. Why should your life be any different? Without measurement, you drift. You think you are moving forward, but you may be circling in place. You think you are disciplined, but memory edits the truth. You forget the slip-ups, you inflate the victories, and in the end you are lying to yourself. Measurement ends the lie. So what does this look like? It can be as simple as a habit tracker, a small notebook where you mark each day you honored your commitments. It can be a daily reflection where you write 3 lines: what I did well, what I did poorly, what I will do tomorrow. It can be a calendar where you place an X each day you show up, building an unbroken chain. These small acts of measurement create clarity, and clarity creates momentum. Because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. The days you waste become visible. The days you rise stand in front of you. And slowly, measurement transforms into motivation. But be careful. The purpose of measurement is not to punish yourself. It is not a whip. It is a compass. It is not there to make you ashamed. It is there to guide you, to remind you of your direction when emotion clouds it, to anchor you when impulse tempts you. The Stoics would agree, discipline without reflection becomes rigidity. Reflection without measurement becomes fantasy. But together, they form a system of growth. You act, you measure, you reflect, you adjust. That is how a human life becomes stronger day by day. So let this law settle into you. If you don't measure it, it's not growth. Do not leave your progress to vague impressions. Respect yourself enough to track it. Respect your future enough to guide it. And when you look back, you will not only see how far you have come, you will know why. Because you chose it. You measured it. You built it with intention. That is how discipline becomes more than effort. That is how discipline becomes transformation. Closing manifesto, the temple of discipline. Discipline is not chains. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. Over these 12 laws, you have seen it unfold piece by piece. Discipline is self-respect made visible. Discipline is living in harmony with your own nature. Discipline is the quiet order that frees you from silent decay. It is the sharp edge that success cannot dull, the movement that does not wait for motivation, the conscious choice that refuses to let life be dictated by scripts you never wrote. Discipline is the integrity of the unseen life, what you do in private when the lights are off. It is the taming of cheap rewards so that deeper satisfaction can rewire your soul. It is the mercy of structure, the daily ritual that clears confusion and restores peace. It is acting not as the person you were yesterday, but as the person you are becoming tomorrow. Every law was not a rule to be memorized, but a mirror to be held. And what you saw in that mirror was the truth the Stoics never stopped repeating. Your life is the sum of your actions, not your intentions. Seneca reminded us that time, not money, is the rarest wealth. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that our journal is not for others, but for the soul. Epictetus reminded us that no man is free who is not master of himself. Think of it this way. Each morning, you are given 1,440 bricks, the minutes of your day. You cannot save them. You cannot hoard them. You can only spend them. Some spend them unconsciously, scattering bricks into the void until their temple collapses. But you, if you live these laws, will lay each brick with intention. Not perfectly, not without error, but with awareness. And slowly, the temple of your life will rise. Strong, ordered, worthy. And here is the secret. You don't need to overhaul your entire life at once. Transformation begins smaller than you think. One promise kept to yourself. One morning taken back from chaos. One decision made with awareness instead of impulse. That is all it takes to change the direction of the temple. because the future is built not in years, but in minutes. So let this be your manifesto, that you will no longer waste time as if it were infinite, that you will no longer betray yourself in the dark, that you will no longer wait for permission, or for motivation, or for perfect conditions. You will act, you will measure. You will respect yourself enough to track your own growth, not as punishment, but as guidance. You will build brick by brick until one day you look up and realize the temple stands. And when others ask how you became steady, how you became sharp, how you became free, you will not point to a single dramatic event. You will point to the laws you lived by. You will point to the discipline that became your identity. If these 12 laws stirred something inside you, don't let this be the last time we meet. Subscribe to True Stoic Way, not for quick jolts of motivation, but for the slow, deliberate work of building an unshakable mind and an unshakable life. Share this with someone you know who is losing their minutes, who is forgetting their strength, who needs the clarity of discipline to rise again. Because we are not here to chase feelings. We are here to build temples, and the temple you are building is your life. Lay the next brick with intention. The rest will follow.